us here today on our coffee break with PJ Hough. Want to thank you for your time as well, PJ. Couple of house cleaning rules. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in the question panel and we will read them out to get your response. Or if you're feeling very brave, go ahead and raise your hand. We'll unmute you and then you can go ahead and have a one-on-one intimate conversation here. So with that in mind, I know you, PJ, but why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience, let them know who you are and what you do.
All right. Well, thanks, Sonny, and welcome, everybody. So my name is PJ Hough. I'm the Chief Product Officer here at Citrix, and I'm responsible for our product strategy and roadmap for our entire product portfolio. I also help run the design team, which is an integral part of the way that product and design work closely here together at Citrix.
All right. So will you be changing your job title to Chief Platform Officer?
Well, I don't know about that one. It's not as doesn't roll off the tongue quite the same way, Pat. But certainly platform is a big part of this, and I've been watching the activity at the conference since it started last week, and it's really great to see all the engagement from the partners and from customers, and frankly, it's been very exciting to see all the talks that are being hosted by non-Citrix employees. It's very impressive and exciting to see the level of expertise that is already out there on much of our technology and platforms.
Yeah, it's been incredible, and for some reason, more than 10% of our talks come from the Netherlands. I'm not sure what they put in the water over there, but they seem to be all in on Citrix. So while people are formulating their thoughts, one of the themes that we've seen come up across both the breakouts and the keynotes is this sense that, we have this set of APIs, and they seem to fall into two buckets. One is for configuring the system, for administering it, for monitoring, those kind of operational APIs.
Yep.
And then the other is for rolling the service into something new, for if you like, white boxing it, OEMing it, whatever you want to say, but using a Citrix service as part of something like new and distinct. And it seems like, that first bucket is like, I don't know, the way it falls in my head is the first bucket is like the SI bucket, and the second bucket is the ISV bucket. Have you kind of seen that bifurcation, I guess?
Yes, I have. I think that maybe I see a slightly different relationship with them, Pat, over time. So obviously the first thing is, for technology like ours that gets deployed at scale, you certainly can't be sitting in front of a console clicking on actions that pop up in a web browser or in a console one at a time to do the things you want to do. You really do have to have a layer that allows you to automate that, and so having a rich set of APIs on the admin side that really support the types of at-scale deployments that we see and the type of at-scale configurations that customers want to adjust means that, probably for our largest customers, that's an essential set of APIs. It's non-optional. And they're just required to operate. They're effectively part of the product spec that says, if you really are enterprise software at that scale, then you better help me automate you so that I can build you into workflows that I have either at the scripting level with tools that I'm using, or maybe even something more like runbook style that's at a more aggregated level, but still lets me, plug your technology in an appropriate place when I'm trying to build or compose or deploy a sophisticated solution. And I'd say they're among some of our most mature APIs as a result of that, because they've been in the product, certainly parts of the product for a longer time, because that's how we've gotten to this level of scale, is by adding those supports for automation. And then that second set that you talked about, which is what I think of as sort of the solution APIs that allow you to take things that we've put in the platform and adapt them as part of a solution where the target audience isn't necessarily IT. It's probably, in fact, your customer inside the organization that's going to use those solutions. That's, I'd say, a newer area for us to invest in. Now, we've had some APIs that sort of sit on the, or I'll say, configuration capabilities that sit on the bridge between those two. So, for example, the customization that you could do in Storefront, which IT did as part of their large deployments, but they did all of that customization and configuration with the view of supporting users, whether it was branding or other things that they did inside Storefront to make it, fit better into a work experience and employee experience. But then there are others that we've been talking about over the last week and a half, particularly with the intelligence features and the workspace platform, which really are much more targeted at building new solutions out of the elements that we're actually delivering. And so rather than thinking about automating our monolithic platform, that second set is really focused much more, from our perspective, on decomposition into reusable components that you can then build into another application. What if you could really integrate, the search that we're building into another application that you're building? Or what if you could surface notifications out of the workspace somewhere else, or even the actions, and have them flow back through the workspace back into that platform and affect changes in the systems of record. So really, I think that first one I think of as organization think about that sort of deployment model for Citrix solutions. And it's not quite fair to say it's sort of the monolithic view of our technology, but certainly it is people orchestrating us and many other steps along the way. Whereas that app composition model, I think, is much more about selecting from our toolbox of capabilities and building something net new. Maybe not with the same broad reach, because it's targeting maybe a particular set of users or a particular organization or a particular business unit. But I think there's a real value opportunity there for developers. And in fact, the thing I'll say that's in common about them, Pat, is we've thought of both of them from, I'll say, low-code, no-code scripting all the way through to real high-end code development. But you're not precluded if you're not a Java developer. I mean, there are so many other things that you can do along the way to take advantage of these. And I think that's important in our platform, is that we continue to be as approachable as possible by people with a wide set of skills.
Yep. Yeah.
Very cool.
Sure.
So we have a question from the audience from Aryan Dev. How will technology change the way people work in 2021?
Well, I suppose I should give the Citrix answer. I'll tell one of the things that I'm hearing more from customers is many customers that I talk to have stopped talking about work from home and have started talking about remote work. And that might seem like semantics with English, but it actually, to me, signals a big shift in the thinking of organizations from the fact that the pandemic, they were forced to, send everyone home, versus post-pandemic thinking about the flexibility of having people work in various locations, office being one of them, but not the only one. And so I think, there are many things about this last year that have been challenging, and I don't think anybody would say were the ideal work environment or scenario that we wanted. But if you could keep what we have in terms of the set of capabilities that we've developed as organizations and blend that with what we had, which was access to facilities that had other services and maybe our colleagues in it, how would we use our time and how would we use our resources? And that's what I see organizations thinking through. Not one or the other, but that new model that says you send people back to the office when they're doing things that they can do better than they could do if they were, in another location. But you don't prevent people from working if they're not in the office. And you don't make it a second-class experience. You make it a first-class experience. And so my takeaway of what work should feel like next year is that anytime I'm working on my own, And I think we all do work on our own from time to time. We write documents, we write code, we troubleshoot problems, we build new things. For those moments, those long periods of time sometimes when I'm working on my own, why should that be any less of an experience when I'm not in the office? We should be able to give you all the tools that you need in your workspace that let you be as productive as an individual when you're behaving as one. And then when you want to connect with the rest of the team, we should be as graceful as possible about enabling the best possible use of technology to support you. If that's remote, it's a webinar or it's a meeting like this. But if it's in an office, why can't we blend this with digital whiteboard technology and actually have a better experience for everyone that's in the room and everyone that is participating remotely? And I think one of the takeaways for me, probably for next year and beyond, is even when we are back to office, we will in the office have to, many cases, behave in an inclusive way towards remote employees, because not everyone on the team will be back at the same time in the same place. And I think this is an area we've struggled with, to be completely honest. I think we've had a very bimodal distribution, remote meetings and in-person meetings. And we've always been really bad from a technology point of view at the hybrid meeting, which is half of us in a room and the other half on a remote call. And I think that's going to become a dominant third type of meeting that we have, and maybe even the most common type that we have in the next year. So if you think about collaboration, not being binary between in person, you and I, arm wrestling over which of us has the whiteboard marker, and it's also not a pure remote where we're all at the end of an internet connection, but it's some hybrid model in between. Now, what do we need? What should a workspace look like for that? And what's the tooling that you put in place to enable, great collaboration for the people present, and then great experiences for the people who are remote participants?
Yeah, and that's another aspect of this that came up on the coffee break with Safi earlier on, is the technology side of, we've had this acceleration of what were often plans that were in place to take place over the next 2 or 3 years, compressed into 2 or 3 months or shorter, in extending secure access to applications and services to employees outside the firewall. And when they come back into the corporate network environment, this is a tremendous opportunity to adopt a kind of a zero trust posture and basically treat that corporate network as an untrusted network, just like you were treating the internet. Because as we know, people bring all kinds of devices in, plug them in, and smart companies already treat that, segment their network, their data centers completely separate, and where the salespeople just come in and plug in their laptop after having plugged it in who knows where. It should be basically treated like, a coffee shop. And I think that's a great opportunity for the enterprises have now to adjust their security posture like that.
Yeah, I was reading an analyst report this week, Pat, and they were talking about 2 emerging concepts. One is the idea of Wi-Fi as the corporate network, and the other is the internet as the corporate network.
Right.
And the trusted model is Wi-Fi, probably splitting traffic between corporate traffic and isolating it from just pure internet traffic. And that's probably the easy first step, where you just say, I don't really, I'm not going to deliver a better experience to wired employees inside the building. The Wi-Fi is going to be first class. It'll be available everywhere. We can reconfigure the space. I don't have to worry about, drop points or anything like that. I just have great coverage. And then the second one is, no, we're going even one step further than that, which is the thing that you're connected to is effectively an extension of the internet. And whatever policy enforcement I have in place, it's not to do with connecting to the network. It's to do with consuming the resource. And so now when I try to, look at an issue in Jira, that's when I authenticate to get access to that piece of information, not by dint of the fact that I have a device that's connected to the local network. And that zero trust approach, I think, is going to, it'll come in stages. But I think stage one might be that, I think, and it's very easy for organizations to do the segmented Wi-Fi for traffic that says, hey, if you're on the public Wi-Fi, you just physically cannot connect to the corporate Jira. That requires you to switch networks in order to, and authenticate with, at a different level of security. But I think the ultimate then becomes, no, you move the perimeter from the network boundary to the resource boundary, and you allow, free traffic on the network, and then you just guard the resources.
Right. Okay, so time for another audience question from Mahesh. Asks, how do you foresee the transformation from product to platform? While Citrix is on its initial journey, other platform companies are moving towards Platform 2.0 with built-in AI, smart contracts, augmented marketplace, integrated IoT and edge computing, etc.
So first of all, it's a very fair question, and I like that definition of Platform 2.0. One thing that's very clear in our industry is that if a 1.0 process takes a certain length of time to complete, latecomers or new entrants into the market rarely follow that same path. They skip generations. They do, I'll call it augmented versions of getting to 1.0. And I feel that's what we're doing here at Citrix. Not everything that you've mentioned in your question, but several of the things that you mentioned in your question, like AI and others, are already in our platform plans. And so I would say we're moving in a slightly different vector than the folks who went through that first SaaS 1.0 platform, the one that Pat helped work on at Salesforce, the first version of it that I worked on in my career at Microsoft. Those platforms, they took longer to prove out. They were less tested. They weren't validated in the same ways. Frankly, the markets weren't as mature, and so you were evolving many things in parallel. And I feel like we've stepped in. Look, think about the conference. We've been able to put on a conference as a 1.0 platform company with such a diverse range of topics, participants, contributors. This is above what you would expect from a 1.0 platform in some respects, partly because of the expertise that's out there in the marketplace, and frankly because we've more accomplished on the platform side than we had packaged appropriately or thought about bringing to the market in a coherent way with the level of support that you need to build a platform. So we're going to fast accelerate through that first phase of what it means to be Platform 1.0, and we're already starting to think about things beyond that. I will say, from my perspective, when you're a platform like ours, you compete on two fronts. One is you compete to retain the people that use your products who want to use it in a platform way. And that one I feel pretty good about. The publishing of APIs, the hardening of APIs, the extending of services that are targeted at our existing customers. I feel like we're on a good path to do good work there. The second way that you compete as a platform is you attract new people onto your platform and you build new things that you previously hadn't done because you're doing it because you know how valuable in the platform they would be to people building solutions. That's the second part. And I think that's where you're going to see us, I'll say, maybe end run a little bit on 1.0 to some of the capabilities in 2.0 that we know are really important, like machine learning and AI and some of the general purpose search things that we're building, etc. Typically not things that you see in first generation platforms. And so we're going to have a more blended model as a result of that. Some of it capitalizing on, I'll say, legacy investments that we've made and modernizing and standardizing them. And then in other cases, attempting to leapfrog some of the old 1.0 to 2.0 transition by anticipating some of the things that you mentioned, which I think are really big, exciting opportunities for us to put into our platform.
And I think that's the first time during these chats that someone beat you to mentioning Salesforce.
It is. I try not to say the S word now.
All right, so it seems like we have a follow-up question from Aryan Dev again.
Okay.
How can I adjust my content to reach new audiences? By building new strategies to reach local areas, different demographic splits, and new interests, marketers can hold the attention of consumers longer.
So if this is I hope I'm answering the right question. When I think about the difference between what we build at Citrix in the platform and what solution developers and builders build on top of us, I think about all the places where a platform like ours can never reach the completeness of solution that the customer wants, and that requires work from someone who's more familiar with the customer, the individual customer, than we are. And I see that on several dimensions. I think some of them, that's why I'm answering the question this way. I'm picking up on some of the keywords that were in the question, Sonny. So one of them is industry. If you happen to know a particular industry incredibly well, and you know the applications that people use all the time, you know the workflows that are most important, you're going to build solutions that are way more tailored to that than we can ever build in the genericized platform, core platform. We have to enable you to do that level of customization and integration, but that's our job. Your job is to leverage that insight you have about that industry to really build that solution in a particular way. Industries are actually often regional or local in some ways. So the way that that industry behaves in North America might be very different than how it behaves in Europe. It might be for regulatory reasons, or it might be because the partners that you bet on have different capabilities, or that the market is less mature in one region than another. And so you need to think about different types of solutions. So I would say industry is one dimension. I'd say geography is another dimension that really sets solutions apart. But the key thing for me is that as someone who builds those solutions, you have to be thinking beyond the first deployment. Even though you're only building the first one, you really have to be thinking about what is the pattern here? What's the repeatable, recurring opportunity that if I take it to someone else in this sector or someone else in this geography, they will see the value in the thing that I have solved here. And so, again, on the one hand, the magic I think that solution providers and solution builders bring is their ability to go the last mile and sort of walk in the customer's shoes, connect to the existing problem that the customer has and solve it. But then the ability to pull back out just a little bit and extract from that solution the structure that would allow them to repeat it in another customer who is likely to have a variant of that opportunity. And so I think that, to me, you really have to look for the strengths that you have in the local region, the local geography, the local industries, to really take your solution in and become really sticky in those markets. In my past life, I've organized conferences when our products, some of the ones I worked on at Microsoft, when they scaled, where we would bring what looked on paper like competitors into the same room. We would bring folks working in the accounting and finance industry from the Northeast with folks from Texas, folks from the Austin area, the Bay Area, and Seattle. And what they would each say in the room is, I don't want to work with, I don't want a client in Chicago. I'm based in Seattle. I'm not going to. I just want to. If I can serve all the accounting needs that are in my region, I'm happy to share strategies and opportunities with other people, because we're non-overlapping, non-compete in that sense. Right. And so in that case, these weren't global players, but these were players who basically had found what I think of something that's too big to be a niche, because it really was like, hey, I'm serving all the Northwest or everyone on the West Coast, but that means I actually don't want to get on a plane or red eye and fly to New York for 2 clients. I'm going to stick with the guys I have and make them successful. And by the way, someone else over there can serve that part of the market probably better than I can, because you know what, New York tax law, et cetera, so I'm just not getting in there. And I think there are many opportunities like that where, and this is, I'm looking a little bit at Pat when I talk like this now, because what I'm really talking about is that one of the opportunities you have as being part of this broader ecosystem is to connect with like-minded people who are pursuing opportunities similar to you, but where there's almost no risk in sharing ideas with them, because you have non-overlapping customers or non-overlapping industries or non-overlapping something that says there's room for both of us here in the marketplace. And so I think that's one of the advantages of being part of a discussion group like this, is that it really lets you identify some of those people with whom you can, bring new ideas to the fore, in a very low risk way to your business.
Yeah, and that's what I've seen again and again. I've been in this evangelism game for 15 years, and that's the value of these kind of communities is exactly that kind of sharing of best practice, where it ends up being beneficial for everyone, and there really is no competition between somebody in New York and somebody in New Zealand. It's like everybody benefits from this sharing and just building the profile of both the community and of themselves within the community, demonstrating that kind of competence and building a reputation. So I would love to chat on for the rest of the day with you, PJ, and I'm sure I will one day. But we've reached the top of the hour, and so I have to announce the winners of the much coveted Bluetooth water bottles are Jeff Bowes, Ronnie Hamilton, and Joseph Ward. So thanks for dialing in, and we'll send those out with your t-shirt and stickers in our shipments. And so finally, thank you so much, PJ. That was fascinating. Great way to end our series of coffee breaks. And enjoy the rest of your evening, I guess. You're still in Ireland, right?
Yes.
All right.
Well, thank you for the invite, and look forward to seeing all the great work that comes out of the conference, and frankly, all the great solutions that get built on our platform over time. Thanks, everybody, for participating.
All right. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.